Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday to you. I hope that you have had a wonderful weekend. And I'm back with my feedback from discussion board number one on character. So many great things you all said, and I've got notes, and I'm going to go ahead and go down my list. Um, uh, Most of the time in courses, I do written feedback in the comments for discussion boards, but in this class, discussing character and ethics, I do like to make video responses to all of you so that we can continue the conversation that we would have if we were in an actual classroom together. So, Daniela, you were talking about working with nonverbal students and how you still, although they can't respond, how you still adjust the energy in the room to reflect not only compassion but respect to these students. And you brought up IEPs, and I wanted to mention that to everybody in this course. Please remember that IEPs are legally binding documents. You want to look at them, you want to review them on a regular basis for each of your students. Um, you want to make sure that the goals are aligned with what you are going to be teaching, or you want to create goals for these students that are aligned. So that, because when you sign that, or when you are working with a student on an IEP in your classroom, that is a legally binding document. So take those seriously and make sure that you keep them somewhere safe. That's protected student information. Sheehan, you were talking about math and that you like to teach students to be open minded, resilient, and be open to criticism. And I think that that is something really important for us to remember as adults, as teachers, but also as a professor. Um, when people aren't open to criticism, a critique, it becomes highly problematic in their growth. And I have had very few, but a few students in the past where I've given them feedback and I've graded them, and I can tell that, and these are educators, and I can tell that they're being reactionary and not open to criticism instead of really looking at that feedback and deeply reflecting. And how I usually know this, when this very rarely happens, but it does, is like I'll give this really in depth feedback on the rubric and I'll submit the grade. And within 5 minutes after I've submitted the grade, I'll get a text message from the person saying, "Oh, I want to talk to you about my grade." I'm like, no, and we've all experienced this with our own students of varying ages. And my response is always, "Oh, I'd love to talk to you about that as well. But what I'd like you to do first is take 24 hours to reflect on my feedback and reflect on your work. And then if you have questions or concerns, let's talk then." And by then, I very rarely end up with another conversation. And people that have had me in this class before, Gregory, a few other people that are in here, know that I'm very kind with my critiques and my feedback, but my job is to help you grow. My job as a MyEd instructor is to pass on my experience, strength, and hope to you. And so, it's important for us as adults to be open to criticism and also teach students how to be open to criticism and also how to give criticism in a way that doesn't make people feel defensive. And it's always good to teach that with the students too. You can do that in pair share reflections or those types of things. Nicholas, you were talking about character in all aspects of your life, coaching, being a son, being a coworker, and you were talking about teaching history. And I think the really interesting thing about teaching history, because I taught American history literature for years, is that you can look at history and look at people who um, are not necessarily villains, but not necessarily heroes. Or you can look at policies and practices that changed over time and seemed okay in the day and age when when it first went down. But as we look at it through the lens of time and history, we can see how that did not benefit or how that became problematic. And so I think you have a beautiful opportunity to show students through history, these events and these people and these things that happen that, there's a lot of times we see it in education still where people think they're doing the right thing and it doesn't end up being that. So I think that's great. Emily, you talked about school-wide positivity project at your school, and there's another student in here, and I have to find my notes on that. But they also have positivity project, and I love that they're school wide, working on those types of things. And you had said some kids, can feel too cool, and we have to model, behavior. And when you said that, I thought adults too, and we we see this on campus all the time. And you know we have cohorts and colleagues and coworkers who are really self-aware, and we have cohorts and colleagues and coworkers that are not self-aware. And how do we manage and navigate that when we're dealing with too cool? How do we navigate those situations, and modeling that for students, when they overhear or they see things when somebody speaks roughly to us, and how do we react in those situations? Maria, you said the funniest thing, and I just loved it because people that have not been around 5 year olds or in their life, self absorbed, I spend my day around self absorbed 5 year olds, and that is so true. They're so cute, but they're so funny. I just saw on Instagram a kindergarten teacher doing a 30-second rule with their littles, where she said, a 30-second rule. If you're going to tell somebody something like, please don't hit me, I don't like that, in the moment, or could you tie your shoe? It's untied. That's okay in her 30-second rule. But saying something like, I don't like your hair, or I don't like your freckles, that's not something that somebody can change in 30 seconds. And so anything that can't be changed in 30 seconds, don't say. And anything that can be changed in 30 seconds, you can say. And I know that that's pretty simplistic, the way I'm explaining it. I'm sure she could explain it better. But I liked that idea for littles, my little self absorbs. And I like that your school also does the school wide character trait focus. Alondra, you said reflection of spiritual core. And you were talking about how, young people they can get worked up about things that we don't really understand how they're getting worked up about. And it is good to remember youth. And if for those of you that have taken the brain-based research class here as part of your MyAd, you know that their brain's not developed. They see all these black and white, no gray areas. And as you get older and you have more experiences, you are able to handle those things better. At the same time, though, having said that, when you were talking about wisdom comes with age, experience comes with age, wisdom comes from self reflection. And, I know a lot of people my age that I don't consider wise or have learned, but I do know that multi-general relationships are really important. Younger people teach me amazing things, older people teach me amazing things, and being open to people's experiences and different backgrounds helps me to be more experienced with age. So staying open-minded and learning and growing, I think, is really important. And I loved the reflection of the spiritual core. Kevin, you talked about gratitude, and I have a gratitude journal that I've been keeping for many, many years. And Kevin, what's interesting about my gratitude journal, and for those of you that don't journal or reflect, it is a really great practice, and it's something that you can add to the end of your school day or your lunchtime routine. Just a few little notes, but it's interesting what happens over time. So when I went through a really bad period in my life where I ended up um, being divorced. And I had been with my husband for, gosh, 20 years. And it really blindsided me when it happened. And I didn't really know how to deal with it. So as I was working through it and going through counseling, this was many years ago now. You know, I've been married to my current husband, Stephen, for going on 18, 19 years. But I was keeping my gratitude journal, and I would always put down 10 things that I was grateful for. 10 things that I was grateful for in a day. And so, on the days that you could see that I was really working on my spiritual practice, working on reflecting on my part in things, really trying to move forward in my life, my notes in my journal would say things like, number one, I'm grateful for my children. Number two, I'm grateful for my health. Number three, I'm grateful that I have work to support my family. Those types of things. And on days that I was having bad days, it would say, I'm grateful for this bed. I'm grateful for this pizza I don't have to share. It was like so cut and dry, so visual. And so what would happen is that when you would go back and you would look for these things. Oh, and another thing I always put is three things that I wished for, three things that I hoped for. And so when you would go back and you would look at these things in the journal, you know, if you had 5 or 6 days, if I had 5 or 6 days that said, I like this bed, I like being alone, I like eating this pizza by myself, then I immediately know that I have some work to do. I need to look at what's going on. And that's important because that bleeds through to all of our relationships. It bleeds through to our classroom. It bleeds through to our community. So it's important to look at those things. So, Kevin, I like that you brought up gratitude and the grit. You know, you're all in the master's program right now. You're showing an excessive amount of grit, resilience, perseverance. And you have all different reasons for doing it. And that's great, but you're doing it. And I think it's really important for us to model to students how we continue on, even when we're struggling, and experience those things. Gregory, you were talking about giving back, and you were bringing up, kids that stay after and help and pick up, or kids that litter and leave. And I think what's interesting is we have to look at where students come from and meet where they're at. And if picking up trash and staying after and doing those things wasn't taught, then I feel it's our responsibility to teach it, and in the kindest way, but call people in instead of calling people out, and see if you can, do something to change that. Some students stay after because they don't want to go home, and that's something we have to find out by building community and looking at. Sometimes they need adult support, or they feel comfortable, or you're their safe adult and they stay. And like I said, sometimes they just haven't been taught. And so we always have these opportunities when students behave that way to find a way to call them in instead of being triggered and calling them out and then losing the opportunity to build that relationship with them. And it's not easy. It's not easy. I've lost it too over the years, but I try to always recover in those situations. Demetrius, wow, your post. I mean, I'm sure everybody noticed. What beautiful writing. And I loved when you said, when you were talking about your senior level, you said, in my senior level expository reading and writing class, for example, I make a point to assign them readings on contemporary topics that force them to grapple with issues of fairness, justice, and equity for all people without regard to their race, ethnicity, income level, or citizenship status. Whew! Thank God. That's all I have to say. I had written for our district Diverse Voices Media Literacy before I left, addressing all of those things. And we have to teach our students how to find common ground. We have to teach our students how to call people in instead of call people out. We have to teach our students to listen. And, you know, Demetrius, if you are not familiar with Dr. Loretta Ross, and that goes for everyone here, her work is very interesting, and she was a radical advocate in the 1970s, and used to call people out, and now she teaches about calling people in. So if you're not familiar with Dr. Loretta Ross, all of you, check her out. Demetrius, I think you'll really appreciate her. Jacqueline, your own personal growth. That's what you said, your own personal growth, which goes back to Alondra talking about wisdom with age. You talk about working on your own personal growth as a reflection of who you are as a teacher and what you present to your students, and how you teach your students to also reflect on their own personal growth. And I loved that you have the Positivity Project, just like Emily. Audrey, you talked about perseverance, which ties back to Kevin talking about the MyAd program. And it reminded me, I've lived so many lives, people. I've lived so many lives. And, I mean, besides being a mother and a daughter and a sister and a friend and a coworker and a teacher, I've been a musician. I've had major record deals. I've lived in this world of music, and then now I'm in this world of academia. And despite the setbacks that I've had in life, I've gone all the way through to education because that was really important to me. And that was really important to my family, but it wasn't easy. And there are people, Audrey, that will say things to me like, "Wow, you're lucky," or "Miss Wood, you're lucky," or "Hey, Dee Dee, you're lucky." And I'm like, it's not luck, it's perseverance. And there's a really famous photograph of Muhammad Ali knocking someone out. And the view is godlike. It's him standing in the ring over this person down on the ground. And I have that picture on my computer because I often feel like I'm the guy on the mats, when I'm going through a hard time in life. Uh, but you persevere, and we have to teach students how how to do that. And there's a scene in League of Their Own I haven't seen in years, but Tom Hanks and Gina Davis are talking, and then Gina Davis, he asked her why she stopped playing ball or something, and she said, "Oh, it just got too hard." And he's like, "The hard is what makes it great." And I always think about that, in the line, "Always dark is before the dawn." Isn't that the truth? Okay, Crystal. I love that you have home base. So Crystal has home base in her school where they meet in the morning to go over things. And we used to have homeroom back in the day. And my school used to have, and they got rid of it. And I was so upset. On Mondays, you'd meet with all of your classes because we're in high school and have block schedule. You'd meet for all your classes for 30 minutes. And I loved that because I'd meet with the kids, build community. We'd do silent reading. I'd pass out all of the assignments for the week. They'd just check in. We'd start off our Monday feeling good, and then we'd have the week, and they took that away, and it just felt really scattered. I think home base and homeroom is a great place to build connection, to build community, to take the temperature of a student for the day. Did they eat? Did they sleep? Are they struggling? Is there anything that you can do before you send them off into the world to help them to have a good day? And so if you have home base or homeroom or zero period or anything like that, that is a great time for you to take the time to see how your students are doing. And Crystal, you had talked about asking students, questions like, "Was that respectful? Would you like to be treated that way?" And I think that's great that you're asking students questions. And we have to watch. I think the hardest thing for us as educators, we have to watch our facial expression, our tone. How can we make sure that we're calling people in? Maybe we can start with, "Tell me what happened." And then instead of, "Was that respectful?" How could that be more? Do you think there's a way that could be more respectful? Um, how would you like to be treated? Let's start with that. How can we look at the way? What do you like? And then let's pass that on to others. So I think you're doing a great job, and just keep calling people in. Tell me what happened, and share a time when you blew it. And that's something I think is really important. I blew it so many times when I was young, and finding ways, from littles to all the way up to seniors, finding ways to show them that you're human. They often think that we do this all perfectly and we're robotic and that this isn't hard for us. And by sharing those stories, age level appropriate, and what you learned from it and how you grew from it, it teaches them, because you have to remember, we don't know who's talking to them at home, if anybody's talking to them at home, or if anybody is sharing these things with them at home. Um, Ophelia, you were talking about them calling you bro or dude, and you nipping that in the bud. Um, my 11th and 12th graders always called me Wood. And in class, Miss Wood, always respectful Miss Wood, but like on campus, I'd always hear Wood. you know, it was a nickname and a sign of respect and all of those types of things. But I agree with the bro or the dude thing. There's a funny Instagram where a student calls all of his teachers. He records it, call, uh, records the reactions of his teachers when he calls them by their first names, and it's pretty funny. But it shows that you should have that respect. And I love that you talked about asking students about their pets, about their life, those types of things. You're building relationships, trust, you're building community by knowing your students, and we should all be doing that. And administrators should be doing that with teachers, and TOSAs should be doing that with teachers, and adults should be doing that as well. Um, when people know about your life, when they care about your life, you know, not only does it build community, but it builds trust and loyalty. And one of my favorite principles, when my mom died in 2018, I was very close to my mom. We lived together. My dad died when I was a teenager. I moved back to my family home and cared for my mom in house until she passed. I miss her still every day. My principal, my favorite principal, who I had not worked for 7 years at that time, he was the first person that called me within 24 hours. And I don't talk to him on a regular basis, but the first person from the district that called me in 24 hours and asked if there was anything that he could do. That man has my loyalty forever. Forever. Just knowing how much my mother meant to me, offering, you know, service, everything. The principal that was my current principal at that time did not say anything for 2 weeks, and then walked past my classroom and somebody whispered, "Don't forget to say something about Dee Dee's mom." And then he said something. I'm sure I don't even have to say how I felt about that. I know you know how I felt about that. So building that community with your students is really important, and it's how you call them in, and it's how you help them succeed academically as well. Sharon, you talked about, and Rashida, you both talked about modeling through stories and positive feedback, growth and change over the years. Um, I love that. You know, Sharon, modeling the stories and giving positive feedback so helps build, you know, build that relationship with students. I've had students that have gotten into my classes before and nobody has ever treated them. You know, they've just been considered, oh, this is a trouble student and that's it. But if you can find the positive, if you can find the positive, if you can find ways to give positive feedback, you can build from there and you can make change. You know, I was a crazy, wild person in high school, and look who I am now. And Rashida, the growth and change over the years. You know, I love that because I'm you know, you look at me and you see 59-year-old Professor Wood, but I'm also 4 and I'm also 13 and I'm also 16 and I'm also 21. I'm all the parts, you know, and all the lessons, and we want to share those with our students as well. So thank you for spending Sunday morning for me. I know this is a long video, but I wanted to talk to all of you and I wanted to give you some food for thought. Hope you've enjoyed the cats running around in the background, and have a wonderful day, and know that I'm always here for you. Take care. Bye bye.